Greetings, Universus Players. Welcome back to another video. This time, I'm going to do the flip side of the coin. Last time I talked about cards I'm not going to miss. This time, I'm going to talk about 10 cards I am going to miss, and give you some reasons for that. Some of this is a little bit of personal opinion. Some of this is going to be things I think are healthy for the game. It's really just kind of whatever, and I'm going to be addressing these in no particular order. But we'll go ahead and get right into that with some honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is apathetic, and I already know what you're thinking. Didn't you mention this in the last video? Yeah, I did. This is definitely a card that, like I said then, I think this falls into a necessary evil category. I like having this card available to me, don't like my rival having it available to me, and that kind of gives me a little bit of a signal that this might be a little necessary. There are definitely ways to flip our rival stuff without this card, but it's definitely just not as point and click as apathetic. I like this card to an extent, but it definitely does a lot of stuff that it doesn't necessarily need to do in terms of our game. Even though it only has one ability, that one ability is exceptionally good. So I do think that this is a good card to have in the format. I just don't have to be happy about it, but this is definitely a card that will be missed in those scenarios where I really need to flip something that my rival has. Following that up is my other honorable mention, and this is another one that's going to look a little familiar to you guys, and that's passing the torch. I like drawing cards. There is no two ways about it. I like drawing cards a lot, and that's why I'm going to miss this card. I think drawing cards is fun. And that's good enough reason for me. I like having a lot of cards in my hand, and I play a lot of Midoriya too. I need cards, so that's where I am on this one. I'll miss it to an extent. At the same time, I won't. So that's why these are on my honorable mentions list, is because they kind of exist on both lists, and that's what makes them notable to me. But now we can kind of get into the list proper with no particular order. Let's open up with an old favorite of mine, Texas Smash. I love this card. I play a lot of punches. I may not be playing this a lot in decks anymore, but this is a card that I just enjoy viscerally. It is very fun to just jam this down and get a whole bunch of damage and like give a bunch of damage to the next one and just make my rival regret being born. This card's so fun to play. It gives me joy just playing it, and it gives me joy just talking about it. This card's fun. It doesn't have to be complex to be fun. Sometimes big number go burr, and that's enough. Following that up is another thing on the good punches train, and that is setup strike. Now, this one is more about the design of it. I like a degree of telegraphing in our game. This slot could just as easily be long-lasting explosion, and I would have the same thoughts, and that is telegraphing something to my rival and making them make a choice is a cool part of the game for me. Do they just block this one, or do they conserve resources for the next one, which I've already gone ahead and buffed? Do they just go, whatever the next one is, I guess I'm taking it? Like, there's a lot of ways that this can go, and that's what makes setup strike cool. It gives my rival a decision to make, and that's why I like cards like this. I want both players making impactful decisions over the course of a game, and this is a card that does that. Speaking of cards that force some impactful decisions, Turn to Dust. This card is so underrated and underutilized, but it is such a cool card to play. Stun 2, EX 2, all these other abilities that make my rival make choices. And it's also just kind of a cool card to play. 4 high 5 is nothing to sneeze at. With Stun 2, like this card comes down and demands answer. And that's part of the fun. I really enjoy the gameplay loops around Turn to Dust and other cards like it. And that's kind of my jam. I like consequences to actions, and that's just how I play. Next, I'm going to move on to the foundations and touch on a couple of things that I think are really cool and I will miss having available to me. And that is Now I'm going to go ahead and move over to the foundations and talk a little bit about, let's just do it here. 3, 2, 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the foundations that I'm going to miss, and I'm going to start with Manley Passionate Guy. I think this card is very cool. Being able to block things, flip this, build it down. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's available that we can really do with this, and I've done a lot of decks with this card because of those cool interactions. I love playing Adorable Telepath with this, being able to bounce my high block, reduce your speed, block with it, build it back down, so I have an on-demand high block is really nice. It's a good, it's a deck building decision that I make, and it's a deck building cost in the fact that both of the cards that I've mentioned are +3 blocks on their zones, but it's a cool combo that I get to do and allows me to play differently. I don't have to keep a billion high blocks in my hand. As long as I have ways to reduce speed and make my blocking life easier, I'm able to use that in combination with Manley Passionate Guy in order to do cool things. And I like doing cool things. Like that's part of the fun of the game. And so Manley Passionate Guy just enables stuff like that, and that's really cool. Next on my list is Nightwatch. This one, I will miss this card from a neutral standpoint, if that makes sense. I like having cancels available in the game, and this was our earliest cancel. And it's relatively innocuous to actually achieve it. If you are playing actions on these symbols, Nightwatch is a good card to have at least one of. Being able to just go, yeah, no, I'm not letting you do that is extremely powerful, and it's something that I think is a necessary part of the game. Being able to interact with our rival is important. We don't necessarily need to stop everything, but stopping the important things is really, really good. So that's where Nightwatch sits for me. Following that, we have Tape. Tape is not an exciting card, but it's definitely something that I enjoy having available to me in the card pool. Being able to flip to change zones to mid is very important. Being able to reduce the speed of mids, even if they are not the most prevalent attack zone, is very beneficial. And a lot of breaker 2s are mids, let's face it. So being able to turn something mid, block with a breaker 2 is a really cool gameplay loop, and it does disrupt our rival in a lot of very important ways. And a lot of decks on these symbols get enabled by that kind of behavior. So I like Tape being available to us, and that's why when it's gone, I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna find something that will fill its spot, but I'm never gonna feel as cool about it. Following that is another card that just doesn't have a real replacement, and that is Irrefutable Force of Nature. This card just does something relatively unique at minimal cost. Commit is a cost. This probably should be unique, but this is definitely a card that does something important. It is an impactful card that raises a question for my rival once I put it on the board, and that is, how are they going to deal with it? What am I answering with this card? It creates a lot of cool choices and interactions, and it changes the order that some things get played, and that's why I like this card. It makes the puzzle of a turn look a little bit different, and you have to move your pieces around a little bit differently in order to really get through that turn completely intact. And that's why I like Irrefutable Force of Nature. It's definitely hard to work around, but it does so in interesting ways. Next is a card that I'm a bit biased about, and that is Fulfilled My Duty. I love this card. Ending the enhanced step is very cool, and I played a lot of E to 1 to start off with. I still occasionally break out E to 1 as it stands, and this is my favorite card to play. This is the reason to play E to 1, being able to take the first enhance and then just end the enhanced step. Your attack has flash at the cost of me destroying a foundation. That's a very cool idea, and it creates a cool gameplay loop where I have to figure out what the right time to do that is. And that's what makes Fulfilled My Duty interesting to me. I like playing this card, and it became harder and harder to play the further and further E to 1 fell out of favor. But this is definitely a card that will always fill that niche for him, and it's always a card that is impactful when it works. Being able to look at our rival, even if we're not E-1, and go, you get one. You get one enhance, and then I'm ending the enhance step. That's a cool thing to have in your back pocket, and why I think this is a cool card to have in the meta, and I'll be sad when it's gone, that's for sure. To round out the foundations, we have one final thing, and that is Villains Defeated. This card does some unique things. I really like having this available, and there's not an equivalent currently. That is an unfortunate truth of this, is that we really just don't get to play abilities like this on much. The closest thing I can think of is generally Faith Shield, but Faith Shield doesn't fulfill exactly the same role. There are definitely things that I would rather remove than just flip, and I think that that's an important distinction. I think having things that do similar things but unique to themselves is very healthy for the game in a lot of ways, and I think this card is one of those that exemplifies that really well. To round out the list as a whole, I'm going to move on to one final action, and that is Plus Ultra. I think this card is extremely cool. Having the option to double your speed or damage if you are a first set character is such a cool thing. I know there's been a lot of things that have moved away from set-based enhances, a lot of things that have moved away from named enhances or symboled enhances, but that's a mechanic that I really like. It adds a deck building restriction to certain cards, but that's the only thing that this card really loses. You can play this outside of Set One characters, and it is still good because it is basically a 5+ check block, and that's good enough in a lot of cases. That will save your bacon, and I do think that this card, or others of its kind, are something that we really would like to see more of available to us. It's such an interesting design space, and it gives you an incentive to play certain characters over others when there are unique things that you are able to do with cards that other characters cannot, and that fosters a great deal of creativity. I like this card for that reason, and that is the final card that I'm gonna miss from Set One. So that's my list. Let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm sure all of you have thoughts about this list as well, and cards that you're gonna miss from Set One. Some of them may be on my other list, and that's totally okay. Everybody gets to play this game very differently, and that's one of the coolest parts of Universus, is the uniqueness of deck building, but also the uniqueness of each player and the self-expression that we really get to bring to the table. And so that's my thoughts on things. That's where I am on cards I'm gonna miss from Set One. I am pleased the set is rotating because I think it will foster more creativity with deck building. But there are definitely pieces that losing is gonna hurt, and we're gonna feel that void for a while where there are things that we've relied on in the past that we no longer can, and we have to find ways around that. And that part of the challenge is unique and fun to me, and I'm excited to be able to do that more and more. So let me know what your thoughts are. I want to know how you feel about the cards that are leaving the card pool and what you're gonna miss from Set One. Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and until next time, just watch me.